Okay, in the previous 5 videos, we have worked out a solution to this problem of count successes, which works fine, passes the test, life is good, except in the intervening years, I learned some new things, and in particular, there's some useful best practices information. I'll include some links in the description below that point out there are some issues with our solution. And so in this short video, we're going to use the shellcheck tool to do some linting, some check for niceness on our code, identify some problems, fix them, and commit that as a new pull request and merge that in. So let's do that. So first thing, let's actually confirm that our tests still work. So let's rerun bats tests, and they don't. Well, the reason they don't is I'm on a different machine, and the first mistake I made, if we look at the actual solution, is here on the first line, the shebang. I said this is going to run in user bin bash, which is great if that's where bash is, but it isn't always there. Sometimes it's in bin bash, sometimes it's someplace entirely different. If you're on a Windows box, for example, running sort of a Unix lookalike, it might be in a completely different place. So the better solution, the more recommended solution, is to have your shebang actually be user bin env, and basically everybody agreed that env should be in user bin, regardless of where else stuff is. And you can hand env a command name like bash, and it will go find that and then use that as the interpreter for the remainder of the program. So the better solution there is to use user bin env with bash as the argument. And if we save that and quit, and we rerun our tests, now our tests all pass. So that's awesome. So now we're happy with that. Actually, let's be really kind of radical and go ahead and do a commit on that. So git commit count successes changed shebang to use user bin env. Changed from a hard-coded location for bash to using user bin env bash, which will be more portable. Okay, so there we go. And now we've committed that. And now we want to actually run shellcheck on our script and see what shellcheck says. And shellcheck says, in various ways. Oh, it actually all fits on screen. How nice. And the warnings that it provides, actually there are 2 types, and it provides links here where you can learn more. The first, as it appears in the file, the second, as it appears down here, is this use $paren notation instead of legacy backticked. So I use backticks here and here and here because that's what I learned when I learned to do this. Well, apparently best practice now is don't do that. Turns out there are problems with quoting. We'll talk more about quoting in a second. And you can't nest backticks. So the recommended solution nowadays is to use this open paren notation. So let's first do that. So let's Emacs count successes again and search for backtick, and we'll just replace that. So this is an easy one to change. We're just replacing the occurrences of backtick with these $parens. And note that you can nest those, which we aren't using here, but could be useful in a more complex project. And as I say, they don't have the quoting problems that backticks have, which we'll talk about the quoting problems more in a bit. So let's save, and let's make sure, let's make sure our tests still pass. They do. And so we can see what we changed. So let's do a commit for that. Git commit count successes, replace all backticks with $quote construct. This replaces all the occurrences of backtick with the safer and preferable $quote construct. Save. Okay, so there we're good. Now let's run shell check again and see what's left. So what's left are all occurrences of this double quote warning. And the concern here is if we look at this first one, where there's two instances of this, if the variable tar file has spaces in it, if there's a file name that has a space in it, which is entirely possible, there's no reason that this tar file couldn't be named my space stuff.tgz. When we expand the variable here, it's going to literally put my space stuff.tgz here. Tar is going to treat my as the name of the file to expand. That's just not going to be good. I don't know what it's going to do with stuff.tgz. I mean, it's just all not going to work. And the same thing could happen here with Scratch. If we provided a Scratch directory where there was a variable name, I mean, a space in the name, so my space Scratch, then it would use just my as the directory here, and Scratch would be floating off in the wilderness, and who knows what would happen with that. So that's a significant problem, and not something I was familiar with because, again, when I learned this stuff, nobody put spaces in file names. You could, but nobody did in Linux because it was all command line, and the spaces kept completion from not working well, and it was, you know, generally just not done. But now, since so many people are using GUI file browser tools, spaces are actually very possible, and we want to be more careful. So the solution, which it tells shellcheck is kind enough to tell us, is to just put quotes around places where we expanded variables. So we would put quotes around $tar file, quotes around Scratch, and then quotes around Scratch down here and down here and down here. So we're going to do that. So Emacs count successes, and essentially we're going to we'll come down here and we'll put a quote here, and we'll put quotes around this guy here, and we need to put quotes around this dude, and then we need to put quotes down here. Okay, so let's confirm that our tests still pass. They do. Let's confirm that shellcheck is happy. Shellcheck is happy. And I should point out, so if we look at our solution again, let's Emacs it. Let's get the pretty colors. We don't need quotes here because that's part of what the $paren does for us. It ensures that spaces are handled correctly in something like this, and that we don't split things up in a weird way. Again, it won't really matter here because we only are using these in an assignment. But if you were to put these in a more complicated setting, you might run into problems where spaces could be treated badly. So the $paren takes care of that and makes sure we don't get weird stuff going on. And we didn't need to quote down here because these were already in a quote. So it didn't matter, right? If there had been a space in this, it would have just been become part of the string, and we wouldn't have cared. So I think that takes care of things. Just to be paranoid, I'm going to rerun my test because I like rerunning my tests. And so we're going to say git commit count successes fixed, fix all, so sure, add double quotes to shell variable dereferencing. This fixes all the double quote warnings from shellcheck and leaves us with a clean file. So I think we're in good shape there. So I'll do git push and over here it said, hey, look, you just did something. Let's have a look and make a pull request. And actually I want to go to my head. That looks better. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say that this fixes all the warnings from shellcheck and updates the shebang to use user bin env for added portability. There we go. Indeed, we changed the shebang, we changed the backticks, and we added the quotes. So that looks great. I'm going to say create that pull request. And then, you know, in a more realistic universe, I'd have some sensible person check it for me. Or if I was pair programming, maybe we would decide that that was sufficient, but, you know, I might sort of add a review or something like that. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to go ahead and merge my pull request. I'm actually going to do a squash and merge, which will squash all three of these into a single commit on the master branch, which is kind of a nifty trick. If you have a lot of commits and you want them to come across as a single commit, you can do that. And notice it's automatically put in the contents of the commit messages from those commits here as a single message. We could edit this if we wanted to. I'm going to just go ahead and leave it. More realistically, we probably want to turn this into something a little more prosy, but we're going to go ahead and just go with this. And we've done that, and I could then delete that branch because I don't need that anymore. And now if I go back up to the top and I look at my count successes, it's the new version with the $paren and the env. And if I look at my commits, I'll see that my last commit was this single commit that addressed a pull request, namely number 1, and did these things and made these changes. So I think we're in good shape. Thanks a lot. Hope that helped. Let me know if you have any questions.